Hey, it's simple, you're watching Thorin channel. Shut the fuck up, you fucking bitch.
A pet peeve of mine has always been that when you have a team which is hard carried, led in terms of fragging production by a superstar player, one of the very best players in the world, if not of all time, and then that team is on either a save for most of the players or a forced spy round, and they have an AK or an M4 and they don't give it to that star player and allow him to go to work. So most recently, hence the title of this video, I think a great example of that has to be s1mple in Na'Vi. Now, a lot was made of this earlier in the year when s1mple was pretty much the only good thing about Na'Vi, and Electronic hadn't yet been used in the right way to become a star player. And so it was more infuriating that s1mple had a Deagle and then it was Edward or Zeus or Flamey or whoever had the AK instead. We saw this, though, quite frankly, also in the grand final of Epicenter against FaZe. Also, I'm reminded in the past of when Neo in 1.6 was playing in Pentagram and Frag Executors. I actually had a scenario there where Lord, now the coach of Kingwin, but at the time the support player of that team, actually just in front of me and Neo and the others when I brought this topic up, like, why does he sometimes have an AK and you have a Deagle? Just outright claimed, like, I don't, what are you talking about? And then when he went back and looked at the demo, fair play to him, he admitted, okay, I did in that scenario actually, I see what you mean, and I made the case to him as to why you should give it to Neo, and they did a little bit more often. Now, there's a number of arguments given against this quite often, and so I want to address those in this video as a way to structure the video. So, first and foremost, one that's often given, especially in the case where it's a supportive player or the in-game leader or somebody who's not a traditional fragging star with great production, is they'll say, well, what if that guy actually saved that gun? What if he had that gun from a past round? And so if you tell him to drop it to the star player, you're going to like impact or reduce his confidence and make him think that like, oh, they don't believe in me to get any kills with that weapon. Okay, if that's indeed true, then first of all, I've got a big question about that player. He sounds too fragile mentally, actually. If he can't, for the good of the team, give up that gun, because then he'll feel like his confidence is eroded and they don't believe in him, I don't know that this guy's ready to be in a top-level team, quite frankly. That sounds like something, because, you know, aren't you a team player? What, you're supposed to be a guy who plays a supportive role, right? What, you don't care about the team winning? You're not willing to do things for the team. I mean, we ask star players all the time, mostly because they're so egotistical often, and often so obsessed and tunnel visioned on their own play, to be self-sacrificing, to be willing to give things up for someone else, to set someone else up to succeed. But what role players, who by definition are supposed to do that, can't do that, and who we aren't even judging purely on frags? Then, what about this? I think it's even more insane when it's a veteran player or the in-game leader who won't do it for that reason. They should, by definition, want to win above all else, and therefore do what is best for the team to win in this scenario, however they might feel personally, or whatever they might think is the right way to play this particular scenario out. Then there's the angle that if it's not the support player, it's not the in-game leader specifically who has the weapon and isn't giving it to the star player, why aren't these guys who play those roles, who are part of the team and the culture and the base of how the system's set up, also backing up the star player and saying, give the gun to him. Hey, could you please give this weapon to him so he can go and do this role right now in this particular moment, explaining why in practices, in the game itself, just asking for it to happen. There's the component where, if not for these people, what about the coach? Is he not drilling people on how to give someone the best resources, how to set them up to be able to succeed in this kind of a particular scenario? People will also say, oh, but the star player, Nico and Mouse Spots, s1mple. They actually said in this round, oh no, you keep that gun, actually, I'll just take a Deagle, I'll get something done with that. Again, I don't care. What I care about is if the player would have the better chance, the star player, of getting that kill, of winning that round, of giving us a better chance to win this particular match, of turning the economy in the game in our favour. In that scenario, that supersedes any sort of little, like, nice little gratitude or gesture of like, oh, I appreciate you guys as well. You keep that gun and do a good job. It's not a fucking charity, you know. We're trying to win some games here. An outlier, though, which I will admit, is, okay, it is maybe different if the star player says, actually, I'm not hitting anything at the moment. I'm having a really bad game. My numbers are bad. You're doing better than me. You just stick with it at the moment, mate. I'll get through this. Like, I need a bit of time to myself. That's one thing. Even then, I'd say that's kind of a bit of a weird mental position for the star player to be like, does he not understand what he's doing in the game, what is needed of him to win in the game, that he doesn't have a choice of just playing badly, he has to turn his game around? I'd even argue then you'd maybe have to deal with the psychological component of what that player's doing particularly, and maybe get him on board to be able to do it overall. Here's another argument that's given, and this is one of my biggest triggers, is when they say, but that star, whether it's Nico or whether it's s1mple, that star player is better with a Desert Eagle, though, than the other player would be if he had to use a Desert Eagle, and therefore it makes more sense to give the other player the AK that he might be able to work with, and the star player the Desert Eagle. Now, the problem with that is, in isolation, they're right. Like, if both of you just have a Deagle, I'm going to say s1mple or Nico has a higher chance of getting a kill with it. But the problem is, that ignores the context of both players' gun scenario, which, let's be real, in those cases, and almost all cases I can think of, the star player is also better with an AK or an M4 than he is with a Desert Eagle or a CZ. Like, I don't care which star player we're talking about here, Nico, s1mple, go through all the ones you'd want to go through. It's almost certainly the case that they are much stronger with the rifle than with that pistol, and therefore you're more likely to get a kill by having them do that overall. So you give him the AK, regardless of who's stronger with a Deagle, having the star player have an AK is going to give you a better chance of winning this particular round, of getting kills in this scenario. So since he's going to get kills in that scenario, you've got a better chance of winning the round. Also, since he gets kills, those might be guns that can go to someone else. Then you've got the scenario where if the star player even dies after getting kills or without getting kills, well, you can pick up his gun. I mean, you could even give the analogy there of like, Eastern Europeans should understand this because, first of all, the Poles and Navi in 1.6 used to do this. They mastered that style of like a half buy or two AKs or an AK and go to the star player, especially an entry type player, and having him progress the rounds through. Then you could even tie it into the historical reference of like Stalingrad and how the Soviet Union fought in World War II, where they would send guys out without any guns and say, you know what, pick up the guns from the guys that are dead. It's a fucked up example, but it was actually done in history. Now, this is even more so the case in s1mple's example because he is not only an aggro player with the best aim and perhaps the best skill in CS history, but he opens rounds, is amazing at that. He can close rounds and win tons of clutches. He gets the most kills anyway. There's pretty much no example in which it makes sense for him not to have the gun. This is pretty much the test case for credulity, that if you can buy the angle that he shouldn't have the gun and the other guy should, then who the fuck would you ever be able to make a case for to have the AK or the M4 in that scenario? Then add in a lot of Navi's success on a low-key level in terms of keeping the economy going has come from these hero AK buys which went to s1mple. That's part of why their force buy numbers are so high, not just from some genius calls and setups. There's some of that, but it's definitely not. It's skewed a lot by these hero s1mple plays. Then add in the current meta, breaking or limiting the CT economy is at a premium. It wins you games and specific maps outright. I'm mainly, by the way, talking about on the terrorist side here. CT side is different depending on what spot you play. The superstar carry player has the best chance to start to limit their economy, to neutralize it entirely. Now, there are outliers, depending on what CT position you play. If your star player is a passive player, maybe you wouldn't give it to Cold Zero in that side. You might give it to Fur instead, whatever form he's in. What about if your star player is someone who needs to have space created for him, needs a setup to be able to go to work? Then it might not make sense. What if the map position means he can't swap his spots like he can bizarrely with s1mple and Zeus because s1mple's so absurdly talented, and therefore your star player is someone that they can avoid? Actually, this happened to Nico when he played in mouse spots at certain times on cash as a CT. Sometimes it wouldn't always make sense to give him the weapon in that scenario. So in these examples, sure, there are a few outliers you can point to, but generally, yeah, you want that gun in the superstar's hands, in the superstar's carry, and quite frankly, I've never heard a legit reason as to why you wouldn't go ahead and do that, and especially with these truly godlike superstar carries. And before anyone tries to tell me, like, oh, what's the big deal, you know, it's just one AK, it's just one round, it's just an occasional thing, you know, it doesn't happen that often. Like, anyone who's followed Counter-Strike at a top professional level knows the scoreboard lies. It's not really that you won 16 full rounds against an opponent who in each time had a similar chance to win the same 16 rounds. A key round decides a game. Sometimes a key kill decides a game. Sometimes a key kill in a round that you don't even win trims the CT economy, so one of them has to save. So one of them has to drop someone else who's going to not have some utility, so that they're put in a position where they rotate a different player to a site and you're able to hit that, and now it's not as easy for them to hold a particular position. There are going to be scenarios that you can't anticipate what the ripple effect will be, but making the correct or the most efficient or the most effective resource efficient decisions throughout the game, hopefully something an in-game leader and a coach are able to understand, and ideally a star player, will give you better chances to win. This video was kindly supported by Andreas, Snazore, Westerlund, Dean Tanglis, Gardner Wilson, Landon Thompson, NateDOhDoubleG, Kyla Harris, Travis Greb, James Harding, Daniel Yordanov, VeXii, Robert Baxter, and a special thanks goes out as always to Jerky's Minion. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? Would you like to ask me a question in my monthly AMA? Would you fancy a few teasers for what's coming up in my content? How about taking part in an esports discussion with me? We'll put your money where your mouth is and join the Scrilluminati today at the Patreon link in the description box below.